Okay. So I'll call the June 9th meeting of the Hudson Planning Board into order. Lynn, would you call the roll, please?
Chairman Colvin.
Here.
Mr. Spear.
Here.
Ms. Palmer. Here. Mr. Woodhull. No. Mr. Michael. Ms. Black. Mr. Shefsky.
Here. Quorum is established. Regular meeting business. First is approval of payment for any invoices that we received. Do we have invoices to approve?
We have two from Governor Ryan and Henry.
Yes. Yeah.
Number 19138 for $1,395. And another invoice number 19137 for $1,800.
Motion to approve is in order. Yeah. Gene, second? I'll second. Okay, Linda?
Chairman Vogel.
Yes.
Mr. Spear.
Yes.
Ms. Cochran. Here, or yes. Mr. Michael.
Yeah, yes.
Black. Here, yes. Shefsky.
Yes. Second item under bills is the release of escrow. We have escrow that we're holding, and all bills have now been paid against those escrow. Linda, can you identify?
Yes, there are 8. 702, 704 Columbia Street, which is Savannah Hudson property to Wilson 7th Street Park, where the radio station used to be. DG's Wine Bar.
You also indicate the amounts. We don't have the
72 North Fifth Street. That was part of the Depot District side. Never, maybe.
72, wasn't that the, separation of the two apartments, two buildings?
Yes. Suma Restaurant, 22 Park Place. 735 Columbia Street. They withdrew their application. That was Little Deb's Oasis. 519 Columbia Street. Next to the parking lot. 202, 204 Warren, and then 1012 North Second. They merged the lot. And another Galvin project, 6575 North 7th Street. That was the Depot District.
Yeah, motion to approve release of these escrow is in order. Yeah. Gene, second. Second. Gene. Linda, call roll.
Mr. Vogel?
Yes.
Mr. Shefsky?
Yes.
Ms. Black? Yes. Mr. Michael?
Yeah.
Ms. Conrad? Yes. Mr. Spear?
Yes. Second item under regular meeting business is the approval of the minutes of May 12th and 28th as previously distributed. Are there edits or corrections to the minutes?
She didn't see the May 28th minutes.
And I'll send them.
Motion to approve the May 12th agenda minutes is in order.
You'll get them next.
This is fine.
Will
I'll
it-
make that motion.
Okay, so we got that in the second for the May 12th approval.
Well, that's what I'm guessing.
Second?
Yes,
Okay. Hold on.
Chairman Vogel?
Yes.
Mr. Shefsky?
Yes.
Ms. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Michael?
Yeah.
Ms. Sasha?
Yes.
Mr. Spear?
yes.
And finally, under regular meeting business, if there are any liaison reports from Nathan or Peter. Nathan, can you hear us okay? Do you have any liaison reports or updates from your work with,
I do not. I have an intention to bring up or sort of remind them that there's a public hearing, but I have not done so.
may I ask, where are you calling in from, Nathan?
I am in the Czech Republic, of all places.
So Peter, any updates on the resolution? Okay. All right, no more regular business, we move into old business, and we have one applicant on the agenda tonight. Uh, 360 State Street. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks again for hearing it. Quick update, we received some comments. Thank you, late last week. Most of the comments are informational. There are still a few comments on the site plan set. They are minor. I intend to, address most of those with notes on the plans. We'll look at the limit of disturbance myself very closely. All of the other comments are informational or pending. The pending comments are the, water and sewer. Specifically, I went to the sewer department and discussed it with them. They made note of the fee for the increase in the sewer use, and in fact, they would need New York State DEC approval as well. And I'm here to ask if that can be a condition of approval. If that can be added as a condition.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. At this time, then, I would like to ask the board to consider setting a public hearing date for next month, if that's available.
Is that an order?
Yeah, I went through our engineer's comments and they do seem to be relatively minor that the applicant can address in anticipation of the public hearing. And as the applicant stated, there were some things that were pointed out, still waiting on the will serve letter, DC extension, all that, talk about that being a condition. So it's in the board's purview to schedule the public hearing if it deems appropriate.
If the board approves, I would recommend that we make it a part of the July regular meeting agenda, which would be July 4th. What's the date on that? No. The 14th.
Should be July.
Second Tuesday.
14.
Okay, so a motion to schedule the public hearing for July 14th at 6 p.m. at the council chambers would be in order. Okay. Gene, second? Linda?
Chairman Colville.
Yes?
Mr. Shinsky.
Yes.
Ms. Black.
Yes.
Mr. Michael.
Yes.
Ms. Belkra.
Yes.
And Mr. Speed.
Yes. Okay, congratulations.
Thanks again.
Anything else for the engineering? board?
No, it was very late as he had, specified, everything's laid out in our comment letter, and we did recommend public hearing as well.
It's actually.
We can do, it's just clean up of this plan to.
Okay, great.
And we should have a response from county planning maybe next week.
Okay, good.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
There's no further old business. New business is, it's going to be a two-part discussion. The city has requested some action from the planning board. And I've asked Andrew to kind of lay out what the issue is. And then we have the time between now and our July meeting to individually kind of understand what this action would represent. Andrew, you want to brief us a little bit on this?
Sure, I'll just go over briefly what the city council is asking and how it got to us. So the city council is considering this new local law pursuant to Hudson City Code 3024-40. Any proposed amendment, they have to send it over to the planning board for a review and recommendation. So code provides we, as a planning board, have 30 days to render such a report and recommendation from the first regularly scheduled meeting after the referral. So accordingly, our time period runs from today. And our next meeting is, as we stated, the 14th. So I think it would be appropriate for the board to consider the local law tonight and then maybe reflect on it and could come back to the next meeting and maybe formalize this report. So let's get over what the city council actually referred. They're doing a local law to amend the code section. Excuse me, my computer's not loaded up. Gee, I'm just gonna grab it from them. So they're amending one of the code sections, and this is specifically related to regulations down in the docking area. I think the board's probably familiar with everything going on down there. I don't know how many board members were members of this board at the time of the project this is kind of related to. So the city wants to amend the code to provide clarity about what the planning board may consider if it were to have another application pending before it about uses permitted in the dock. And obviously, this is about the Colarusso proceeding, which is currently under an Article 78 proceeding. There is active litigation surrounding this. As I think the board is aware, the articulated concern to me from the city council was that if the court were to send that application back to the planning board, the planning board would have to interpret the applicable code section, which is 3025-17-1D1. And the city council wants to put in specific parameters for the planning board's consideration. And those parameters are the conditions of approval that this planning board previously put on the Colarusso project for the conditional dock operation. Now, if the city council could not move forward with this, then the planning board would be interpreting and applying this section where it is considering uses as existed on the effective date of local law number 5 of 2011. And that's a little less than clear, because I don't know if there's exactly a known quantity. I know there was some research done back then. There were significant reports and comments provided to this board. But cutting through all that, this is the city council's effort to simplify and to give an explicit direction about that code section. Because obviously the planning board can't interpret the code. It relies on the legislative body of the city through council. And this would be their explicit language that the planning board would then apply. Now, what are the planning board's options? I think, and this is before most of our time, this local law or substantially similar one was referred to this board sometime last year. And the planning board declined to make a recommendation on it. They deferred back to the city council's discretion, which is an option for this board. But the city council is going through the required steps, sending it to the local law to this board for a report and recommendation. And really just wanted to open it up to the board and see how you all want to proceed. And I do think it would make sense for the board to digest it a bit and read through it, maybe come back with any questions they had so we could properly make a recommendation or take some sort of action. And I should also point out that this board, in acting on this referral, is only for completing an advisory opinion. We, as a board, don't get to adopt anything. It is just simply a recommendation to the city council, where by means of an example, this board could say, that's great, we should adopt it, and the city council could decline. Or this board could say, we recommend not adopting it, and the city council could elect to adopt it. It's really an advisory piece.
And the common council, their next meeting is after our next meeting. So one option is that we, as Andrew suggested, that we take this information, digest it during the next month, and then we'll have it on the agenda for the July meeting. I just put a footnote. This may trigger some people's reactions because it was a painful process for the planning board last year and for the community. But I think this is not this doesn't rise to that level of decision-making by the planning board. And I think as we all become more familiar with it, we'll see it's a somewhat small administrative step just to help clean up the language in the city code. So any discussion or questions tonight? Any alternative points of view that need to be shared?
Just have a point of clarification. You mentioned Article 78. What is that exactly? You said it was on Article 78 litigation.
Right, so what Article 78 just generally is when someone challenges an action of the planning or any other board, but challenges an action of a board, arguing that it should have been different or was arbitrary, capricious, not supported by substantial evidence. And there are a few that the city's currently involved in, shouldn't really comment on active litigation, but just pointing out that there are some there.
And we have two currently where the planning board is named in those suits. And it's a little bit like a lawsuit like being sued. And it's why these meetings, it's so important that we create a solid record of our work. So that's how we defend ourselves if we do get challenged through a legal action like this, is that the records that Linda keeps really becomes the credibility of our work and defends our decision making. So, any other comments or observations about this issue for tonight? Peter?
I guess I just have a question about what it means to report and what is that, what are the expectations? It's not like we're voting on something. Is there an expectation that we have one voice or that we make some unified decision? I'm just sort of curious what the delivery.
So I'll just read the code section, and normally it would be, you present the opinions of the planning board. If the board could agree on a position, that would make it easier, but I'm not opposed to drafting one that sets forth all the prevailing viewpoints. Now, the code section there states as follows: concerning a proposed amendment or change in text of this chapter, the planning board shall make an inquiry and determination concerning these areas. Whether the change is consistent with the aims and principles embodied in the chapter, which areas, land uses, buildings, and establishments in the city will be affected by the change, and how, the indirect implications of such change, and whether such proposed amendment is consistent with the aims of the comprehensive plan. A lot of points of consideration, but I will point out that the board is not limited to these if it want to go beyond that scope.
Can I just try to run back for clarity of my own understanding? The problem is that there's a vague, difficult to enforce clause in 32517, the part of the code that talks about the core riverfront CR district and defines that. It's in the conditional use section of D part 1, which has to do with continuation of existing commercial dock operations. As such uses existed on the date that this law was enacted in 2011. So if it was happening in 2011, it can continue, is kind of what the current code says.
Yes.
And so they're proposing, but then I'm seeing language that talks about 2540.
2540 is the amendment section. I think the council sent that over just so we know
I see.
the procedure in which it's being amended.
I see.
I read it as specifying explicitly a certain number of truck trips that happened in 2011. Is that, like, I find it a little bit hard to follow, just honestly. Is that your understanding as well of what it specifically is doing? It's like stipulating a fact, right, that is not currently specified.
Right. It seems like, in my interpretation here, is that the city council is trying to clarify this and set a solid number and also incorporate planning boards previously adopted and implemented conditions of approval. And that's in section B, I through 10, 1%.
This is just a vote.
And I should just point out, this would not impact the approved project as it currently exists, all subject to litigation and everything else going on. So I'm sensing some uncertainty about this section, and that's fine.
I think what we're dealing with is trying to get clarity. Not this, it's not that there's discomfort. I think we just need to understand. And that's why we recommended that we not vote on it tonight, to give the board an opportunity to live with this, get more information, do whatever research you feel you need to do. And then we'll come back next week, next month. So we can still discuss tonight, Sarah. I can see your gears turning.
Well, I mean, I love an opportunity to talk about the minutia. But I don't think I didn't comprehend this before we got here, so now I'm just reading and trying to understand.
Linda, is there anything we're missing that you're aware of? Okay, good. Any further comments on this new business? Questions?
Are there any questions that should be answered before we end the discussion that board members could take away with them to better delve into this in anticipation of the next meeting?
Well, this is something that just came like recently,
Right.
as a lot to absorb. The old law and the new law. So yes, we need time to reread it and read it and read it. If we have a question on any of the issues that are to be bad papers, you can call upon you for advice, or should we hold it to the meeting?
I think you could direct it to the chair and the chair could reach out to me with any questions that need to be answered. And of course, I could always seek some further clarification from the city council's attorney. If that would be beneficial.
It might be helpful to get a more fulsome kind of description of in non-legal ease. It might be a little easier for us to process that, so maybe you and I can find a place where we can get that information. So we'll try to do that in the period between meetings.
And this is just how, I guess I'm curious about just the overall process, less about the content of the local law, but we're in a process that just gets triggered when they consider a law and they put something forward to the
Right.
planning board. This is just sort of a structural process, right?
This could be a law changing anything.
Right.
Well, but yeah, within the part of the, there's like
Right.
a section of the code that's like the planning board has to have an opinion on this before it's.
And it also goes to the county planning board as well as the city.
And then once the clock is up and we've reported to them, then they hold a vote. And as you said, they can vote one way or another.
The city council will also required to conduct a public hearing on this prior to acting on it. And I'm not aware that one has been scheduled yet. So there is some time before any action could be taken.
I have a question about, I don't know for the newer members if they understand the effect that this is going to have, right? This seems like a small change, but it's a huge, it's gonna have a huge effect. It essentially undo everything and partially close down Paulrusso's. I mean, after they built, I think, a $1 to $2 million private road, right? So, I mean, is this something that is going to have more, legal litigation tied to it if it's brought into effect?
Well, that's not an easy question to answer, but I should point out, I think it's the city's intent city council's intent where this code section might not be necessary, where it would not change the approval as it is.
Yes, I understand, but they're essentially putting this in effect in case it does get sent back to the planning board, at which time it will have a big effect on our new decision that we have to make, right?
Our
That-
decisions will be constrained by
This law.
the increase of external evidence.
Yeah, so I mean, that would be essentially, everything, they wouldn't be able to bring all those trucks in and then therefore the dock operations would slow down, right? So,
The planning board would be bound by, if the application were to come back and this were the code and the law at the time the board is considering it, it would be bound by this. So
Yeah.
yes, that's it.
so I guess what I'm asking is not that like what follows after that, because this is gonna create on the office, this issue has created waves, big waves on whatever side that you feel is appropriate, right? So this obviously is going to create waves for Colorusso and, limit what they're able to do. And so will putting such an effect on the law, what does that mean? Like, does that mean now we're looking at another article? You know what I'm trying to, so it's just such a drastic change in light of that, okay, we might get a second bite at the apple, so to speak, and now all of a sudden we're putting this law in. And it just seems like, I don't know, like, how's it gonna play out long term, I guess?
If I knew, I would tell you.
Yeah,
It's
I
tough.
mean, will it be subject to that? Could it be subject to?
Certainly could.
Okay.
Those are good points, Veronica. One of the things that, one of our options, we have three options. We can vote to support this change. We can vote to not support the change, or we can ignore it. So in a way, our role may be somewhat inconsequential because it's the city, the county council that will actually make the decision.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So, yeah.
I was just curious
Yeah.
because this is obviously gonna cause waves one way or the other, right? And, you know, I think it'll be a lot of what we kind of just.
Yeah. Well, let's do our homework between now and the next meeting. And if you have questions in the intervening time, let me know. And I'll direct them as best I can. I'll see if we can't get a write-up that feels a little bit more comprehensive, that helps us understand. And I appreciate the seriousness with which the board is taking this because it does have a history. And it has a future. So, and we're right in the middle of it. So
Yes.
our role is not to be bystanders, but
Yes.
part of the decision.
I'm sure you can be, I'm sure you're aware, it's quite contentious of all of that.
So-
Really, yeah, I know.
I have like a question just like on the factual nature here. So I have struggled to understand the proposed legislation, just like what it actually does versus what was approved by the planning board last year. And so if anyone is able to like break down for me how the 2011 baseline amount would be different under this and how the 10,000 trips, the part B, I guess, of the change in legislation would be different than the previously approved with conditions. I'm just like trying to understand what this actually changes versus the previous approval for Colarusso, so I can actually understand what we're like, so I can have an informed opinion about what to recommend. And so I think that's the like one little bit of a fact that would be helpful for me over the next, few weeks as we're looking into this.
I think that's a great point, you know, and I think just so that, you know, the few of us that have been through it before, I mean, we would probably be speculating to what this would affect, you know, and then the people who aren't, you know, I just think it would be great for everybody to have like a solid concrete, like this is what could, you know, it could potentially affect and change.
Yeah, if that project was being evaluated today, what would be materially different? I think that would and just like A versus B, and the current legal language is really hard for me to parse, at least to understand that.
Yeah.
The previous planning board approved the conditional use for medical college. The Article 78 was fine, and it's still pending in the courts or wherever it may be. This proposal by the common council will have no effect on that board decision.
Unless it gets remitted back to us and we have to decide again,
If they're going to decide again
And if-
based upon this.
based upon whatever the law will be effective, the law changes, yeah.
Without getting into any vested rights arguments or anything like that. is what aren't there. But yes, it would be so. Generally, the planning board applies the code as written at the time it reviews an application.
But I mean, I know we're winding up this section, but let's just say that this new section gets, amended or revised. Would there be anything retroactively in the past that would be considered foilable? And like under the old terms, like can they use any material from the previous decisions of that's, whatever you decide on going forward?
Potentially, but generally, if it's not in this law, then you couldn't use things from an old approval that's no longer valid to support or argue for a new approval, especially with a new code section. That doesn't mean the argument won't be made. So we'll be ready either way.
And I know we have short meetings tonight, but if we could just maybe spend like 5 minutes really Cause I'm not, if I walk away understanding this better, I'll be more likely to understand it better when it's said it. But, so I don't actually, I'm not actually locating what the proposed change to the law is. What's the language?
Normally those are.
I think it might be the second page, the second large, and italics.
Second,
Hey, is this it on the second page in italics down
oh
here?
yeah, so the idea is the council game. Yeah, because the findings and purposes are not included in the. And then just to step back, it's like, this section of the code says this is what's allowed here, C, permitted uses, public docks, parks, and tours, voting facilities, water taxes. And then it's like, well, here's the conditional uses. These are the things that you should approve, that are not those things that are already approved by law.
If
And so
you
that-
need a side by side
Yeah.
or a red line.
Yeah, that is helpful. And I'm pulling up the current code
Yeah,
section.
that's
So I can get it.
And so the thing there, to continue to existing commercial dock operations to the transportation of goods. As such uses existed on the effective date. Any existing commercial dock operation may continue to operate as a non-conforming use until such time as one or more of the actions. That's a part of the section.
So the language says that they are amending the section to add new subparagraphs A and B as follows. So you go there. That's section 1, continuation of existing commercial dock operations, and then you flip it over. And it's my understanding that A and B are the new ones.
So that's the brand.
Yeah.
Was there an A and B?
One,
So there is, if you look at the code as it exists now, that one section starting with continuation, there's no A and B.
okay, so there's no change to subsection 1, and then it's just adding.
So is the actual effect here that it says explicitly that the board can do what it did effectively, which is limit Colarusso using or and like impose conditions that are the ones listed, which are the ones the board implemented? Like I'm just like trying to follow the legislative intent. Like it's confusing to me.
More in the abstract, yes, where it's saying this board would consider these mitigation measures for any application in the dock core riverfront district. And then it's explicitly taking the board's 10, I think, conditions of approval and adding them to the code. So it's codifying what the board already did.
But it's also attaching them to the increase in trips. No, it's 10,000 truck round trips.
Yeah.
It increases the permissible limit up to, it seems to some agree negotiates condition. It says increases the permissible limits up to the greater of 10,000 truck round trips and 5,000 tons of material, provided those 10 are constructed, put in place, employed, or maintained on or in relation to the dock course of operation.
Subject to all this, right? So it's setting a hard limit. And then putting the built-in mitigation measures.
So the question is that 10,000 and the 275, is that where the other applicant, potential applicant is at now?
Yeah.
Or are they already way above that, and this doesn't really apply to them, and this just applies to somebody else new who comes along with the new application?
But the bottom and the top, it seems, is 2011, the low end, and
It's putting a cap in there definitely, rather than the planning board determining.
That's why we need the, previous comparative that we made
Yeah.
under this law.
Yeah.
Well, there, from what I understand, these two subsections are not there, so it's like, it's just, it's just clarifying this aspect.
Yeah. Let's give some clarity.
I'm having a process going. And that is either sometime between now and the July meeting or at the July meeting, we ask the city to present this in a open meeting, answering our questions, presenting it in a way that we can understand. Either we can schedule a special meeting, that would be a single item on the agenda. That would be this, or we could ask them to present the July meeting. Any reaction to that suggestion?
Sounds reasonable.
That sound useful for the
Yeah, I mean, I think we all need a lot more clarity to really understand,
Yeah.
you know, if this is,
So would your preference be to do it between the meetings so that we actually are informed when we come into the meeting next time? Which I think sounds like a pretty good idea. And maybe, can we do meetings strictly remotely, or do are we able to do that?
I pulled up your city code here, and I think it does permit for authorization of meetings via video conferencing. Yeah, all public bodies, boards, and committees of the city are authorized to use video conferencing technology to conduct their public meetings.
Yeah, I remember being a lot more constraints about it around that.
Yeah, you might have a quorum issue.
Yeah, I mean, if we're not voting on something, it's just an.
An informational meeting.
More of a workshop.
Yeah.
And there would be no anticipated action at that
No.
meeting.
No, and then we would be better prepared. If we do the interim meeting, then that gives us a chance individually to get additional information if we need it before we actually come to the meeting and where action is going to be taken. Any thoughts about, let me frame it differently. I'm going to recommend that we schedule a special workshop meeting between now and July 14th for the purpose of inviting the city to explain to us in a level of detail that we are all comfortable with what they're really asking us to vote on. Is that a workable idea for us?
That is really good.
Okay, so Linda and I will work with you to find a date, and I will reach out to either through you, Andrew, or directly to the city to see if we can get them to do this presentation for us.
And I'll confirm we're complying with all open meetings law and that.
Yeah.
And if we are able to do so legally, we'll do it virtually. Makes it easier for everybody. Does that sound all right? Okay, good.
I mean, this conversation improved my reading comprehension vastly. So I feel like I can-
Well, I think because of the history, I think we want to be super smart about this.
yeah, I mean,
And, and
it was really. And that's putting it lightly. I mean, just off the top of my head, and Kaylee and Jean may remember this, but I think we approved them for, was it 280 a day truck trips? I mean, 10,000 will be met really quickly. You know, so they're approved for currently, I think, many more than the 10,000. You know, so kind of being able to compare, you know,
That'd be 35 days, of 280 truck trips, I think.
yeah,
it's-
it wouldn't
that's
take long.
27 a
so-
day.
Yeah, so that's a huge, you know, that's a big difference. And I think there's just so much to consider, that the things that Colorado's did do to mitigate things and to make this as best as possible for the city, you know, and to just, I don't know. I think we just have to see the comparison to really,
so I'm going to ask a favor. We'll be reaching out to you using the Outlook email. And I'm really hopeful to get a quick turnaround so we can get this date in the calendar. So watch your email over the next few days and so that we can lock this thing down. And we're going to try to do it in the next 2 weeks, 10 days, like that. So any further discussion on this item in the agenda? Any further discussion? Any other items that need to be brought to the attention? Yes, sir. Okay, then a motion to adjourn is in order.
I'll make that.
Second.
And we're adjourned.